Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there lived a man named Elias. Elias was known by everyone in the village, but not for reasons he was proud of. He was the kind of man who always had an excuse for why things went wrong in his life. If his crops failed, it was because the weather was bad. If he lost his job, it was because his boss didn't like him. If he argued with his friends, it was because they didn't understand him. Elias believed that life was unfair to him, and he carried this belief like a heavy weight on his shoulders. One day, a great storm swept through the village. The winds were so strong that they tore roofs from houses, and the rain flooded the streets. When the storm finally passed, the villagers gathered to assess the damage. Elias' house had been hit hard. His roof was half gone, and water had ruined many of his belongings. As he stood there, staring at the wreckage, he did what he always did. He blamed the storm. "Why does this always happen to me?" he muttered. An old man named Marcus, who was known for his wisdom, happened to be passing by. He stopped and listened to Elias's complaints. Then, in a calm voice, he said, "The storm did not choose you, Elias. The storm came for everyone. But look around. Other houses still stand. Their roofs are intact. Why do you think that is?" Elias frowned. He had never considered this before. He had always assumed that bad things just happened to him more than others. But now, as he looked around, he saw that many of his neighbors had prepared for the storm. They had reinforced their roofs, cleared the drains, and stored their belongings safely. Elias had done none of these things. Marcus continued, "The difference is not in what happened, but in what was done before it happened. Those who took responsibility for their homes protected them. Those who did not suffered." Elias felt a strange stirring in his chest. For the first time, he wondered if his life was the way it was because of his own choices, or lack of them. That night, Elias could not sleep. He kept thinking about Marcus's words. The next morning, he decided to do something he had never done before. He took responsibility. Instead of complaining about his ruined house, he picked up his tools and began to repair it. He asked his neighbors for advice on how to strengthen the roof. He worked tirelessly, even when his muscles ached and his hands grew sore. Days turned into weeks, and slowly Elias's house became better than it had been before the storm. His neighbors noticed the change in him. They saw how he no longer blamed others, but instead took action. Some even offered to help him, and in return, Elias helped them with their own tasks. One evening, as Elias sat outside his newly repaired home, Marcus came to visit him. He smiled and said, "You see, Elias, when you take responsibility, something extraordinary happens. Life does not necessarily become easier, but you become stronger. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being the master of your fate." Elias nodded. He finally understood. All those years he had believed that the world was against him. But the truth was, he had been against himself. By refusing to take responsibility, he had given away his power. From that day on, Elias changed. He no longer looked for excuses when things went wrong. If he made a mistake, he admitted it and learned from it. If a challenge came his way, he faced it instead of running from it. Over time, his life began to transform. His work improved because he put effort into it. His relationships deepened because he stopped blaming others. Even his health got better because he took care of himself. One winter, the village faced another hardship, a terrible cold spell that froze the rivers and made food scarce. Many people struggled, but Elias was prepared. He had stored extra firewood and food, knowing that winter could be harsh. When his neighbors came to him for help, he shared what he had. The village came together, and because of people like Elias, they survived the winter without losing anyone. Years later, Elias became one of the most respected men in the village. People came to him for advice, just as he had once gone to Marcus. Whenever someone complained about their troubles, Elias would tell them his story, how he had once been a man who blamed the world for his problems, and how everything changed when he took responsibility, he would say, responsibility is not a burden. It is the key to freedom. When you take responsibility, you take control. And when you take control, you can change everything. And so, the man who had once been known for his excuses became known for his wisdom. His life was proof that no matter how difficult the past had been, the future could always be different, if one had the courage to take responsibility for it. The lesson of Elias is simple but powerful. We cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. Blaming others or circumstances only keeps us stuck. Taking responsibility sets us free. It turns victims into warriors and chaos into order. It is the first and most important step toward a life of strength, dignity, and peace. So ask yourself, where in your life have you been avoiding responsibility? What would happen if, instead of blaming, you took action? The answer might just change everything. And that is the power of taking responsibility.